Hey, it's Ron, and I want to tell you a story about business and how that story changed everything. Outside, Chicago is frozen solid, as it often is. The temperature hovers near zero. The streets are slick with ice, and the gray afternoon sky presses low over Randolph Street. Inside the brand new Iroquois Theater, it's a different world. Warm air, chandeliers glowing, and the sound of an orchestra tuning up for the holiday matinee of Mr. Bluebeard. Backstage, an actor by the name of Eddie Foy adjusts his cuff and glances at the house list. He's done this for 2 decades. Mining camps, vaudeville tours, Broadway. A showman whose name alone can fill a house. The papers call him one of the finest comic performers in America, and he's proud of this theater. Chicago's newest palace, billed everywhere as absolutely fireproof. From the wings, he looks out at a solid, sold-out crowd. Mothers and children wrapped in wool coats. Businessmen shaking off the cold. Shoppers taking refuge from the weather. It's the kind of audience he knows by heart. The first act goes perfectly. Big laughs, flawless cues, applause rolling up to the balcony. When the curtain falls, Foy steps off stage to grab a sip of water before the second act. When it's time, the band strikes up again, the dancers move into position, and he straightens his jacket for another entrance. Then, somewhere above the stage, an arc lamp flickers, a tiny blue spark catching on a painted canvas backdrop. In minutes, that single spark will turn the absolutely fireproof Iroquois Theater into an inferno, and the matinee's crowd's laughter into panic. But what happens when a city is told a building can't burn, yet a single spark proves otherwise? How does a routine holiday matinee become a test of everything people trusted about safety and design? And on December 30th, 1903, how did one flicker of light expose the cost of believing the sales pitch instead of the safeguards? From Business Basics, I'm Ron Trucks, and this is Business History, the daily podcast where we explain the stories that changed business forever. Throughout history, every date on the calendar has a story where business reshaped the world. Today, December 30th, that story takes us to 1903, when the curtain caught fire and business finally faced consequences. It started small, a puff of smoke above the stage, faint enough that some in the audience thought it was part of the act. A spark from a faulty arc lamp had ignited the edge of a painted muslin backdrop, dry as paper and treated with flammable oils that made the colors shine under the lights. From Eddie Foy's vantage point in the wings, it was instantly wrong. He shouted for the stage hands to drop the asbestos curtain, the theater's supposed safety device, but the mechanism jammed halfway down. The flame leapt to the curtains, then the wooden scenery, and in seconds the ceiling disappeared into a rolling cloud of black smoke. The Iroquois Theater only opened 5 weeks earlier and was a masterpiece of luxury. Marble floors, gilt trim, velvet seats. But it was built like a trap. Exit doors locked from the outside to prevent freeloaders from slipping in. A balcony so steep that railings trapped people in place. Iron gates across stairwells to control crowd flow. Every detail designed for revenue and control, not escape. When the power failed, the gas lights flickered out, plunging the auditorium into darkness. Panic followed. Hundreds of people rushed towards doors that wouldn't open. Parents tried to shield their children as smoke filled the aisles. Eddie Foy ran onto stage in full costume, waving his arms and shouting for calm. "Sit down! Stay seated!" trying to keep the crowd from stampeding. He stayed there until the heat drove him off his feet. Within 15 minutes, the fire consumed the entire stage. The audience, trapped by design, had no chance. More than 600 people, most of them women and children, died in what would become the deadliest theater fire in U.S. history. Chicago awoke the next morning to the sound of funeral bells and sirens. The city coroner called it a slaughterhouse. Newspapers printed lists of the dead across entire pages. The Iroquois Theater, once advertised as absolutely fireproof, now stood as a blackened shell. The investigation moved fast, too fast for comfort. Inspectors discovered that fire alarms hadn't been connected. Sprinkler systems had been removed to save money, and exit doors opened inward instead of out. City officials had accepted bribes to approve the building's permit without ever walking inside. The so-called asbestos curtain? It wasn't asbestos at all, just painted cloth laced with chemicals that burned as easily as the scenery. For Chicago's business community, the scandal hit hard. The city had spent years trying to rebuild its reputation after the Great Fire of 1871. The Iroquois disaster made every civic promise sound hollow, and for the first time, the public stopped blaming fate and started blaming management. The outrage spread nationally. Architects, insurers, and theater owners were called before boards to explain how a brand new building could fail so completely. And they had no good answers. The real truth was simple. Profits had outweighed precautions. By spring of the next year, the first safety ordinances were drafted. Fire exits were required by law to open outward. Doors could no longer be locked during performances. Stage lights were shielded. Aisles were widened. Occupancy limits were enforced. For the first time, private enterprise found itself legally responsible for public safety. What had burned in Chicago wasn't just a theater. It was the illusion that business could regulate itself.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
In the years that followed, the Iroquois fire became the blueprint for prevention. Every modern safety system, illuminated exit signs, occupancy limits, flame-resistant curtains, sprinkler systems, emergency lighting, traces its lineage back to that winter afternoon in Chicago. City governments began hiring full-time inspectors. Fire marshals gained the authority to shut down unsafe buildings. Insurance companies rewrote their underwriting standards to reward compliance and punish negligence. For the first time, building safety became a cost of doing business, not just an afterthought. The changes went beyond architecture. The idea of corporate liability took root. If a business invited the public in, it assumed responsibility for their safety. That simple expectation, born from tragedy, still shapes every mall, every stadium, every office tower today. The Iroquois Theater never reopened. The lot sat empty for years before being rebuilt as a music hall, and then as the Oriental Theater, now renamed the Nederlander. But beneath the marquee, a small plaque still marks what happened there. On December 30th, 1903, that was the day a theater promised safety, failed to deliver it, and forced business to start taking that word seriously. I'm Ron Trucks, and this is Business History, the daily podcast that finds the turning points behind the headlines. To hear more stories like this, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. And if you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to subscribe and please leave a quick review. It helps more people find the story behind the business. And do you want to actually understand business without the fluff, the buzzwords, or the MBA language? Start by visiting bsnsDailyPodcast.com.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery.